Convention?
It's the Prime Ministers that decide when we're going to call an election.
Election?
There's going to be lots of polls, and you know this better than most because you've covered multiple
they're
elections.
consistently looking pretty grim, right?
And
somewhere out there is, material that MPs might not want to see the light of day.
Ejection. These are the interesting times. Hello everyone, my name's Matt Johnston and welcome to The Interesting Times, a show that looks and laughs at UK politics. There's a new poll dropped and it's looking like it's drop-kicked Rishi Sunak straight between the uprights.
Well, a little bit of breaking news we can bring you now. A new opinion poll has forecast Labour are going to win more than 400 seats at the next general election. The poll by YouGov predicts that the Conservatives will perform worse than they did under John Major in 1997. Looking at this poll from between their fingers at number 10, might they, John, just talk us through who's brought this poll out and what it tells us?
Eyes closed, more like in number 10.
Well, eyes closed, ears closed, brain closed. But the mouth's still open though. But Rishi Sunak's main problem, according to Conservative Home's Tim Montgomery, is...
Rishi Sunak's failure really is, fundamental failure is, I follow politics incredibly closely. I don't really know what he wants to do.
I can tell you what he doesn't want to do.
So when we found out that you would be joining us on The Breakfast Show this morning, we did post about this on social media. Lots of people got in touch with a whole range of questions, but the overwhelming one was, when will there be a general election?
I've answered that question many times in the last few weeks.
So when will be the general election? Can you give us a date on BBC Radio T's This Morning, Prime Minister?
No, unfortunately not.
It's the Prime Ministers that decide when we're going to call an election.
Yes, a long-standing convention that when a Prime Minister is elected, based on being the leader of the party most people have voted for, then they should be kicked out of office and replaced by an unqualified psychotic gerbil based on the votes of members of that party. And then that person, after losing the popular vote to a vegetable of their choice, is replaced by someone coming along saying, I can do that, and given the job because everyone else hasn't met whatever bizarre rules were decided by three white dudes at the time. That is what we in the UK call democracy. Sucks to be you, Denmark. We certainly don't have it when the majority of people in this country want it. Where did you go to democracy school? Germany? Anyway, how can we know if the majority of people want an election? The only way we can know if the majority of people want something is to have an election, which we can't have as we're unsure if people want it. Also, no border poll for Northern Ireland for the same reason, and yes, Scotland and Wales, same response to the whole independence question. It is starting to look, though, like Rishi is getting ready for a new job.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Great.
Ronnie, hello again. How are you?
No, sorry, I wasn't expecting you.
Hi, Kat. Hi, Honor. How are you?
Good, I'm good. How are you?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. It's Rishi. How are you doing?
It is actually a crime to give financial advice to anyone without having the relevant qualifications and accreditation, which, according to the FCA, Rishi Sunak doesn't have.
A criticism you hear from actually all quarters about Rishi Sunak is that he often isn't great with the public.
Not great with the public? Did you not hear his Zoom call?
Hello again, how are you? Hi Kat, hi Honor, how are you? How are you doing?
British politicians and their famous quotes. With Churchill, we had, "We will fight them on the beaches and never surrender." Harold Wilson, of course, said, "A week is a long time in politics." And there was Margaret Thatcher with, "When people are free to choose, they choose freedom." Well, I think we'll all remember where we were when we heard, "Hello, how are you?" But there is no denying that things are tough for Sunak. He's obviously hoping that the local elections help him out, which is about as likely as Jacob Rees-Mogg becoming the next James Bond. Things are really tough for the Tories, as being pointed out here by Liz Truss. He must be the only person I can think of that looks like she can hold books hostage.
My book, 10 Years to Save the West, is out in the United States and the United Kingdom. The West is in danger. If we're going to win it back, we need real Conservative values being implemented, and we need to change our politics and governance. Go to my website to get a copy of this book.
10 years to save the West. Get it from all bargain bins or sarcastic relatives soon. Liz Truss there, who missed out on saving the West by a mere 9 years and 11 months. The Conservatives are now so unpopular that MP for Mansfield and Man in the Field Ben Bradley has taken to hiding behind a tree.
Hello, I'm in beautiful Baslow, where I'm letting local residents know about a big change that's happening this May. On the 2nd of May, our area will get a £4 billion investment, and local residents will be asked to choose a new regional mayor for Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. That's a big job, big responsibility, because it will be that person will be in charge of billions of pounds of local infrastructure.
Still, nice to see Ben in a field rather than under a bridge. You know, like a troll.
Labour councils failing local residents. If you live in a Labour council area, you pay more council tax. You're more likely to have to wait behind non-British nationals for social housing. Their record is terrible.
Ben is applying to be the first ever East Midlands mayor, backed here by the first ever unelected by anyone Prime Minister.
It's great to be here with Ben because there is no one better to be your first mayor than Ben Bradley, everyone. Woo! Not only did Ben literally create this role, he also has a track record of bringing in investment. As the leader of Nottinghamshire County Council, he secured billions of pounds. And then you go over to the West Midlands, where we've got the great Andy Street. And Andy Street is delivering for his community, making sure that he secures more investment than Wales and Scotland combined. In contrast, just look at what's happening in London with Sadiq Khan. More interested in virtue signalling than actually delivering. Failing on crime, failing on housing, and his transport policy is to tax motorists off the road and rename train lines, for goodness sake. And whilst Andy and Ben don't charge their residents a penny in extra council tax, Sadiq Khan saddles his constituents with £400 in extra bills. It just goes to show, what do you get with Labour? They tax you more and deliver less.
It's almost like there's some connection between giving the local council a large amount of money and them doing well, as opposed to not giving them any money and them doing badly. Who knew? But what a crowd they managed to get in. What about this guy? Who grins like that, having been told they're going to hear Rishi Sunak give a speech in a bus station in Derbyshire? Or this woman who has clearly been kidnapped? The Tories have been busy though. They rolled out the Childcare expansion plan, introduced at last year's budget, giving all working mums of 5 and under 15 hours of free childcare a week, going up to 30 hours. And it comes in 3 phases. Phase 1, starting in April, will give working mums of 2-year-olds 15 hours a week. Phases 2 and 3, get Labour to pay for it.
Fantastic news today, the launch of our offer for free childcare for 15 hours. So I've just been here in Asda talking to mums and grandmums, and the great thing is that everybody was aware of this offer, and by the time our rollout of our full childcare offer is complete by September 2025, this will save parents on average about £6,900 a year. But if you haven't heard or you want to find out more, go to childcarechoices.gov.uk.
Hang on, she paid for that. The bill certainly looks like a good one, giving mums of young children the opportunity to get back out to work or look for work, provided it's been well thought out and not just rushed through by an imploding, morally bankrupt Conservative Party desperate for votes and out of ideas. I mean, any ideas, including how to put this into place. So, provided that hasn't happened, it's a good idea.
Pressures from one side, other side, to keep them in. There's a lot of costs going up and up and up. And then also the fear is that, well, you're putting these systems in place that nurseries are struggling. As my answer, the fear is that we'll lose another nursery in the town because the system doesn't feel, or certainly the information is coming out that doesn't feel like the system is got the foundations right.
There you go, Times Radio. You can't say Rishi isn't improving with his communicating with the public. A few weeks ago, if he'd heard about people struggling, he would have laughed his head off, rather than grinning like a Cheshire fat cat. I mean, another 6 months, and he might even be able to fake sincerity. So, for all those thinking that this means that the Conservative Party is now a bunch of warm, caring, woke, humanity-loving humans, don't worry. Tories got a Tory.
Rough sleepers could find themselves being arrested if they are a nuisance, according to the Times newspaper.
This is really about trying to make sure that we get supported accommodation for people who are on the streets. And that's why.
Supported accommodation for rough sleepers? Yeah, like this.
Well, of course, if somebody's acting aggressively or being a nuisance, then that is different. So, you know, the police are operating.
What about if sorry, Secretary of State, we're running out of time. You were a little late to us. What about if they smell?
Sorry.
The bill states that rough sleepers might be considered a nuisance if there's an excessive smell. So if you smell, you might be arrested.
Maybe the police's time will be better served looking into the stench of corruption coming from here first. That was Secretary of State for Education and presumably irony, Gillian Keegan, showing there that there is no problem you're facing that she can't smile through. Oh, and of course, the Conservatives are an equal in-opportunities party. It's not just the desperate people already in this country they're prepared to criminalise. It's those desperately coming into it as well.
Do you countenance leaving the ECHR to get Rwanda going?
Look, on this, I've been very clear. You know, I believe that our scheme, including the Rwanda part of it, all our plans to tackle illegal migration. Let me just answer the question, Harry. I believe that our plans are compliant with all our international obligations, including the ECHR. But I believe that border security and controlling illegal migration is more important than our membership of any foreign court.
Just our unelected Prime Minister there going all Kim Jong-un. By the way, it's not a foreign court. It's an international court, which Winston Churchill helped set up and which we are signatories to. But the Conservative Party aren't really massive fans of that going by the book, following the rules, legal, not committing genocide thing.
In any realm, in any respect. So you've never had a piece of paper put in front of you by a Foreign Office lawyer that says that Israel is in breach of its international humanitarian commitments under international humanitarian law?
Look, the reason for not answering this question, I can't recall every single bit of paper that's been put in front of me.
Come on, when you've been a member of the Conservative government for as long as David Cameron has, you can't be expected to remember every bit of advice telling you something is illegal. Good to know that it's now gotten to the stage that the government lawyers are now attempting to cover their own tracks by creating a paper trail. This is in relation to the horrifying news that 7 aid workers, including 3 Britons, were murdered by the IDF. A horrible, brutal crime. And finally, a Conservative was prepared to speak up. Just not one of this current rabble.
There are a lot of people at the top of our own politics who refuse to condemn settlements and therefore are not supporters of international law. Conservative Friends of Israel has been doing the bidding of Netanyahu, bypassing all proper processes of government to exercise undue influence at the top of government. But at the top, slightly improved by the removal of Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, although even today she is still supporting Israel and the bombing and the annihilation of people in Gaza. And she does not believe that settlements are wrong, nor, I suspect, do Michael Gove, Oliver Dowden, and Priti Patel, by the way, should be reinvestigated for her visit. We still don't know who paid for her trip when she came back and tried to change government policy as a result of going on a secret trip without actually telling her officials or even the local ambassador.
That was Secretary of State for Trade during the early Cameron years, and uncle being told they don't need to be so close to the camera during a Zoom call, Alan Duncan. And it was a well thought out and stirring case which highlights the horrific position the government had taken on Gaza, not only by not publishing any legal advice it's received, but also still selling arms to Israel. But on hearing this bold and forthright condemnation, the Conservative Party realised the eyes of the world were watching. They decided doing nothing was simply no longer an option.
But breaking news we can bring you. Sky News understands that Sir Alan Duncan is under investigation by the Conservative Party.
Come on, Alan, you don't just come onto a news show with facts and reasoned argument. You've been with the Tories long enough to know if you want to point out illegal activity being done by the government, there's a process. You write it on a bit of paper and shove it under the nose of the most absent-minded foreign secretary in history. Here's a story I didn't expect to be covering, while simultaneously not being surprised by it.
During the last 2 minutes, a news story has landed which says that a senior Conservative MP has admitted his involvement in a honey-trap sexting scandal targeting a minister and fellow MPs. He is William Wragg, who's the chairman of a Common Select Committee.
Possible, Aubrey, to answer the question why he felt obliged to share that information, or is it not possible to answer that?
I understand that he doesn't necessarily feel as though he was directly blackmailed, but I think he understands that all of this was very erratic and irrational, and I think he's thinking long and hard about his future today.
No, don't do that. That's what got him into trouble in the first place. So, William Wragg meets somebody on Grindr, sends dick pics, then when asked, not blackmailed, gives over the phone numbers of a couple of other MPs. Meanwhile, at least 2 other MPs have sent dick pics. What's going on? So, full disclosure. All right, not quite full disclosure. I was sent a WhatsApp message from a number I didn't recognise, who obviously recognised me, or at least knew my name. And I didn't reply. And you know what else I didn't do? Send pictures of my penis. Well, not yet anyway.
And he told The Times that he had handed over the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a person he met on Grindr, which, if you don't know, is a gay dating app. And he provided the details after sending intimate pictures of himself to the user. He says that he did so because he was scared that the individual had compromising things on me.
Begging the question, with what? A new sexually explicit photo? I mean, who cares? Go onto the internet and it doesn't take much Googling to find a photo of William Wragg handling a big cock. So, north of the border, the SNP have decided to make things a little bit interesting up there.
We're going to Scotland now. New laws to tackle the harm caused by hatred and prejudice come into force there today. This is the Hate Crime and Public Order Act.
So many questions, top of which must be, what do the English think?
I mean, it just goes to show the whole thing, I mean, is so ill-planned.
And it's just complete farce.
But is this a step too far? Have the lunatics taken over the asylum?
Well, I think the Act is an abomination.
What the Scottish Government is doing, it is giving people a tool they can use to settle a score.
Other thing that's concerning people is that these claims can be made at special hubs, as they're called. Well, if you go back to the days of the Salem witch trials, if you decided that someone was a witch and you told the local community that, then that person was effectively dragged off.
By creating a law around hate crime in that controversial area, you stand at risk of people saying very moderate, legitimate things like, you know, sex is real, I don't believe people can change sex, I believe that female sport should be for females only.
Labour, as you say, Labour supported it. Looking at it now, Mr Jones, would you consider an act to repeal it? Is it workable?
Well, it's an act in Scotland, so that's the question for the Scottish Parliament.
Yeah, but what's your opinion? You've got an opinion on it. What do you think?
It's the introduction of the 2021 hate crime bill. Yeah, we aren't fans down here, and it seems that the Scottish people don't like it either. In fact, they hate the crime hate bill. It's another of these legislation that unfortunately all seems to get a bit confused about what it is and what it covers.
But just to put it in perspective, the legislation basically broadened. The problem originally was about racial hatred. Yeah. They then added other characteristics of disability, religion, sexual orientation, age, and transgender.
But this is why you can't police hate, because at the end of the day, one man's hate preacher is another man's freedom fighter.
Yes. Yeah, this bill is just discriminating against those of us that want to spread hate speech. So, some clarification. J.K. Rowling misgendering people will not be arrested over this new legislation. And her saying, oh yeah, arrest me, makes her sound less like an international best-selling author and more like a 7-year-old that's past her bedtime. Simply put, you can criticise transgender ideology and religion, but you can't make insulting or abusive insults about them. You aren't allowed to incite hatred based on a person's age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, or variations in sex characteristics. All very good. And the bill has gotten rid of blasphemy laws. Great stuff, Scotland. Welcome to the 21st century. So, don't we have these laws across the rest of the UK? Yes. Okay, good. So, let's move on.
Morning. We're going to be talking about this Hate Crime Act, this bill in Scotland, making it potentially an arrestable offence to say something which somebody might deem to be stirring up hatred, even if it's around your dinner table. We really have reached the end of day.
We're still struggling with this. This anti-hate legislation is needed. And yes, there are issues with it, such as relating to performance and theatres, where so often plays are there to push societal boundaries, and having the police enter because of complaints made by the public seems authoritarian. But bloody good publicity. And yes, you can be reported for a crime if it happens in your own home, but you could be anyway. The nearly 4,000 complaints in its first 24 hours is just a sign that either people don't understand this new law, or more likely, once Police Scotland said that they would investigate every complaint, people decided that they would fuck with the Scottish police, which, if my Scottish friends are anything to go by, is kind of a national pastime up there. This isn't going to stop free speech, but it's certainly going to put a stop to consequence-free speech. And to that I say thank God, which we in England and Wales have been able to say since 2008. Or yes, the 21st century. And that's it. No time to talk about...
Brexit is still a very divisive issue.
No, absolutely no time whatsoever. Do we though? Really? Because every time we do, it just seems to end up with suck it up, losers, and you were warned, and I fucking told you, and Ramona tears. It just seems to bring up more crap than John Footgooders trying to understand, well, Brexit. All right, this year will be 8 years since the referendum. So what better time to get an arch Remainer and farmer, Liz Webster, an arch Brexiteer and bespectacled 18th century toothpick, Jacob Rees-Mogg, to see if they can find some common ground. Although that might be tricky, as Liz had already used up her common ground to create this beautiful masterpiece. Mwah! But this is a good idea, and I live in hope that we can finally find a space where we're listening to each other rather than fighting all the time.
I do, because all we do is subsidise Irish, French and Dutch.
You want the Europeans to have an advantage on us, so we have huge trade barriers exporting to them, and you want them to have the freedom to come in as well and not have the same.
Yeah, okay. Maybe give it a few months first. Have to say, though, that this becomes a regular segment on GB News, or taking it on tour, it could really take off. You could call it Liz and Lies, or Reality Meets Tory, or even Remainer God versus Chamber Pot. There is a bit of an issue on Brexit though, and it's going to happen soon, as in before summer soon.
I get it. Nobody wants to talk about Brexit, but we really need to talk about the Brexit border tax. Businesses importing food into the United Kingdom will have to pay £29 a time to do so for each type of food. Because most businesses import multiple types of food at the same time, it means in practical terms, most lorries will have to pay £145 to import food into this country.
£145 on average per lorry, which the importers are going to pass on to the consumer. Wait a minute, this is on top of the £200 million white elephant border posts across the country, which are going to be taken down. Don't the Tories know there's a cost of living crisis going on? Well, they may not today, but before the year's out, I'm confident they will have gotten the message. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, then feel free to subscribe to the channel, as well as like and comment and share. And I'll see you all soon. Take care.